Dear class, it is I. He's back. I'm back, and I'm looking out at a wonderful sunny day. I can't help wanting to show you what it looks like out of my window, since you can't be here with me and I can't be there with you. That beautiful blue you can see is not actually the pool; it's the cover. There's a pool, but nowhere near actually being able to go and swim. So I don't know if you saw anything there from this complete blur, which I'm sure it will be for me one day, a total blur looking out of this window. However, for the moment, it's gorgeous sunlight, and I hope maybe you have a backyard to enjoy it in. Maybe you go for a walk, fearlessly masked and begloved, or maybe not gloved. I'm going out masked and gloved several times today. My daughter, my youngest daughter, she would just be so upset if she knew I was going to even leave the house. But I have to take stuff to the trash. They won't come to us. They never come to us. It's not coronavirus effect. I have to go to the town dump, or transfer station, as it's politely referred to. Because if you're embarrassed by the town dump, as you could refer to toilets as human transfer stations, which in a sense they are. But enough of this nonsense. I am going to go out. I shall wear my gloves. I shall wear my surgical mask that makes me look rather official. It's now rather impressive. I look like I might be a nurse or a doctor, and people might applaud me. But they're just going to watch me toss things. So thank you very much, those of you who have battled their way through the immense, epic tragedy, if you accept it as that, that is Eugene O'Neill's The Iceman Cometh. I've received some beautiful sets of answers to my quiz, my long quiz, for which I'm very grateful. And I hope that you will battle your way through this play, imagining all the while what it is to have a stage filled with drunks, as opposed to an audience filled with drunks, to have a stage in a saloon, in a sleazy saloon whose owner has actually not managed to leave the saloon since the death of his wife Bess many years earlier. He's planning to do it today, the day of the play as well, his birthday, his 60th birthday. Poor Harry Hope. But he's imprisoned, as all the characters are in one way or another, as perhaps we all are. You may find this too gloomy a view of life. It is to me. I've been very fortunate. I barely even drink a glass of wine time to time, a beer from time to time. I've never been able to discover the joy of extreme alcoholism, although I have many alcoholic friends, and I carry them more or less home, or I used to. Now you don't do anything like that anymore, not in the era of the plague. So there they are on stage. They're a heck of a sight, gazing blindly out at you, the audience, who should wish to escape this fate. There couldn't be a more stirring advertisement for teetotalism than The Iceman Cometh. You really don't want to end up like any of these guys, although some of them do have appealing qualities, and some of them are very touching, the two old adversaries of the Boer War, who have wound up pals, although if the Boer War were to start again, they'd soon be shooting at each other. And there are many interesting characters deriving, I have no doubt, from O'Neill's own experience, not in the years leading up to the writing of the play in 1939, but and precisely, it's my guess that he hadn't met too many lowlifes. I'm sure there's many a drunk whom he knew well. Successful people can be alcoholics, and but the days in which he frequented saloons were long behind him, 25 years behind him, and I think he went back there in memory to the people that he met, the people he knew, the kind of people he knew, to his frame of mind when he was suicidal, really, at that point early on in his life. And his own last years were desperately sad. He could no longer hold a pencil. He had come to the end of his capacity for composition. He lived in a hotel in Boston, saw hardly anybody except Carlotta, his last wife of the three, and it's awful. Of his three children, the eldest killed himself at the age of 40, and the middle one was shiftless, more or less a kind of character auditioning for Harry Hope's saloon in The Iceman Cometh. And he had banished the youngest, Una, whom I knew as a child, Una, who became Una Chaplin. She married Charlie Chaplin to the horror of her father, because Chaplin was his age, and there was a gigantic gap between the two, which didn't prevent them from actually having a pretty happy marriage. Chaplin was a serial adulterer, if ever there was one, but they had a wonderful daughter whom I knew, and it was a great sadness to everybody that it was part of the blighting of O'Neill's later years, even though he had come by then in the early 50s to be applauded and appreciated as the extraordinary writer he was. His ambition was to create a tragic theatre for the first time, an American tragic theatre, and his successors, if there really are any, are kind of O'Neill light. Arthur Miller, wonderful writer, Tennessee Williams likewise, but it has been said, and I think not unfairly, that their greatest works are works of pathos rather than tragedy. Now, you might disagree. Many people love Death of a Salesman, and many candidates in Tennessee Williams's work. I personally love The Night of the Iguana, which is not a tragedy, not intended to be a tragedy, a lovely play if we had lots of time to study drama. If we had lots of time, we could spend a year on tragedy. We would read a lot of Strindberg, who a great writer who influenced O'Neill a great deal. And whether O'Neill's work, I mean, there's a lot of it, is a tragic corpus of work, is open to debate. Whether The Iceman Cometh is a tragedy is open to debate. It unveils a tragedy. I mean, to the extent that until you know that Hickey killed his wife, oops, spoiler alert, sorry to anybody who is watching this and hasn't read the play yet. Until that revelation, the cast you might accuse the cast of being victims, which I simply say that in terms of category. Can you have a tragedy of victims? Arguably not, otherwise Chekhov would be thought of as a tragic author, and he isn't. I mean, you and I or anybody may wish to see any of his plays as tragedies. The triumph of Uncle Vanya as a play, I think, is that nobody dies. And yet they do, nor does anybody die in The Cherry Orchard, his last play. but they do, unfortunately, sadly, in The Three Sisters somebody dies, but whether the death of Tusenbach makes that play a tragedy, it's not clear. He's not a tragic figure in the mold of Aristotelian drama. But and of course, the people who are not crazy for Chekhov, one of their great complaints is that it's all victims. These are all people, victims. They're so sorry for themselves. And until Hickey reveals the magnitude of the personal tragedy that he's bringing to the table, maybe it's really a Chekhovian play, but expanded to include many characters and many stories, and Hickey brings a level of catastrophe into the story, as does the resolution of the tale of Larry's former girlfriend, mother of Parrot. And there's a I'm using the word tragic all too casually, but in an informal sense, there's a tragic resolution there too. And whether that makes it a tragedy, it's a category issue. Nobody really goes to the play to see whether it's a tragedy or not. You go to the play because it's a famous play by O'Neill, and if it's a good production, I saw a wonderful one with the great American-Irish actor Brian Dennehy as Hickey. If you see a great production of it, the force of it, it's a grim play, but the force of it and the spreading of the grimness through all these different characters, unlike some of Beckett's plays where you have a confined number of characters and the grimness is not distributed enough to create any air between the separate individual tragedies that you see on stage. So the force of the play is overwhelming when you see a good production, but it's overwhelming with its sadness, the sadness that expresses O'Neill's view of the world. He had found the world a harsh place, and people disappointed and sad. And he had great sadness in his own life, although I have to say he made it all himself. But that could be said of many of the characters in The ICEMAN. I'm touched by one of you who sent in their quiz answers, specified the brand of socialism or anarchism that was the movement, so-called the movement, that is referred to as an offstage matter, historical matter, hugely important in the history of America. If you understand the movement to be that of the industrial workers of the world, the Wobblies, as they were known. A union who fought capitalism in a way that contemporary Americans can't even imagine, and they haven't even heard of the Wobblies anyway, who were in a tremendous force. And they produced some great leaders, including Eugene Debs, who ran for president from jail, jailed for spreading dissent about the war, about the First World War, refusing to join in. And he ran for president, got 1 million votes, give or take a few, from jail, was a great man, had many wonderful things to say. We could talk about Eugene Debs at great length. A great American, forgotten, unknown to even educated Americans, even history majors. Haven't heard of the Wobblies, know nothing about what kind of a country they belong to, because what kind of a country has it been? Where has America come from? Americans have no idea. And Gore Vidal, a great author, described America as the United States of amnesia. Truer word was never spoken. We've forgotten the Wobblies, but they're there in this play by reference, and Larry is an important character, almost a narrator, almost the witness, who sees all the terrible things that have happened, and sees it all in the bottom of a glass as well. And you're shown why you would seek solace in the bottle. So I hope none of you are yet quite at that point of seeking solace in the bottle. I hope you're managing day by day, and I hope you're keeping safe, and I hope you and your families are well. All the best, my dears.